The Security Council met today on the crisis in the Central African Republic. During the closed consultations, the members of the Security Council examined the report of the Secretary General, which includes recommendations for the transformation of MISCA into a multidimensional United Nations peacekeeping operation. The member states also heard from Under-Secretary General and Emergency Relief Coordinator Valerie Amos and UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres about the dire humanitarian situation on the ground. In his report, the Secretary General stresses the need for a unified, integrated approach to the deployment of a multidimensional peacekeeping operation with the protection of civilians as its utmost priority. Roughly 6 months are foreseen to prepare the deployment, which, if authorized by the Council, which is supposed to be phased and closely linked to the priority objectives of the mission. While the urgent priority is to halt violence and provide a secure environment, as the security situation evolves, the peacekeeping operation would focus inter alia on supporting the extension of the state and the consolidation of a stable political environment. During the consultations, UN Council members mentioned and agreed that the humanitarian, human rights and security situation in the CAR is grave. And deep concern was expressed by Council members about the regional impact also of the crisis, and in particular also the refugees in the neighboring countries. More generally, the need for an involvement of the region was stressed, and all members welcomed the important work of MISCA and also of Operation Sangaris. I think it is clear, and like the Secretary General also stresses it in his report, there is not going to be an easy and short-term solution to the complex crisis in the CAR. The state is overwhelmed, courts and prisons have ceased to function, the already dire socioeconomic situation continues to deteriorate, and for example, salaries of the public servants have not been paid in months, and there is an urgent need for reconciliation between the communities. A number of Council members also underlined the importance to deliver quickly on pledges for humanitarian aid, as well as to support peace building and state building measures in the CAR, including critical support to democratic institutions and the security sector, the rule of law and good governance. Urgent action to prevent a further deterioration of the situation is needed, and during today's consultation, also France announced that it will circulate in the weeks to come a draft resolution in order to authorize the deployment of a peacekeeping operation. And again, also Council members very much stressed the need, in the meantime, also to provide support to MISCA.
Madam President, is there a consensus, at least conceptually, that there should be a UN peacekeeping force of the size that the Secretary General recommended and deployed quickly, particularly that immediate surge that Monsieur Lassoud recommended? And when you say weeks before a resolution would be circulated and passed, I mean, we heard from the Central African Republic Foreign Minister that he's looking for real urgency to this effort. So why would it take weeks rather than days if there's a consensus? Thank you.
I think we all agree that there is urgent need for action, and Ambassador Rowe is standing there. He can answer to the question on the draft resolution, but obviously I think we are all determined to act very quickly. I think we were moved also by the appeal from the Foreign Minister of the Central African Republic this morning, and this sense of urgency certainly characterized our consultations this morning, which started off the first discussion on the report of the Secretary General, and I think there is a general sense there that we need to move to a peacekeeping operation and a phased operation also, and we will have to work on the mandate, on the details.
On MISCA, was there any discussion of providing it assistance even in the interim, in the 6 months, of things like air support or medevac? Some people have said like there's some very concrete things they need. And was there any discussion of the Muslims that have been essentially chased out of the country being able to return to so that it isn't really a matter of cleansing, as Mr. Guterres called it?
I think there was discussions about support needed for MISCA, and there are some proposals also in the report of the Secretary General in this respect, and we will have to look very closely into that. On the issue of, and I don't know if Mr. Guterres is still around, or if he also will come, certainly this was an issue discussed, also the dilemma the humanitarian actors are facing very much also in this situation, what to do, how to do you help, do you assist in evacuating and people if they are under threat, and do you make yourself a little bit, are you part then of that effort in this respect? And that was also discussed, but also the need for reconciliation. And I will now, I think, leave it, because we will have another.
Bonjour. I make the declaration first in French and then in English. Bonjour. Nous venons donc de tenir des consultations sur la situation en Centrafrique. Cette réunion a permis à tous les membres du Conseil de s'exprimer sur les recommandations du secrétaire général pour la Centrafrique, notamment la proposition d'une opération de maintien de la paix que la France appuie. Nous avons tous d'abord rendu hommage à l'action de l'Union africaine, 6 000 soldats de la MISCA qui fournissent un travail admirable pour faire cesser les atrocités en Centrafrique. Comme vous le savez, la France est en soutien à l'Union africaine avec 2 000 hommes de l'opération Sangaris pour ramener l'ordre dans le pays. Tout le monde l'a dit, grâce à l'action de la MISCA, appuyée par Sangaris, nous avons évité une catastrophe en Centrafrique. Mais le secrétaire général l'a indiqué dans son rapport, si le pire a été évité, la situation demeure tragique. Donc la communauté internationale doit s'engager davantage. Il faut plus de soldats pour stabiliser un pays qui est aussi grand que la France et le Benelux réunis. Ce que recommande le secrétaire général, vous le savez, c'est le déploiement d'une opération de maintien de la paix qui permettra d'abord d'augmenter de 30% les effectifs sur le terrain, mais également de donner les moyens logistiques pour la projection dans l'ensemble du pays et également les capacités civiles pour reconstruire la Centrafrique. Vous avez tous entendu le ministre des Affaires étrangères centrafricain demander au Conseil de sécurité d'autoriser le déploiement d'une OMP, et je crois que nous ne pouvons pas tourner le dos à cette demande. C'est pourquoi la France présentera dans les prochaines semaines un projet de résolution qui proposera la création d'une OMP pour prendre la relève de la MISCA. We just had a consultation on CAR. The meeting has given the opportunity to all council members to express their views on the recommendation of the SG for the CAR, especially the deployment of a peacekeeping operation which France supports. We have all commended the action of the African Union in CAR. 6,000 troops of MISCA are doing an admirable work on the ground to make atrocities cease in the country. 2,000 French troops are supporting the African Union to bring back law and order in the CAR. The briefer said it this morning. Thanks to the African and the French troops, the mass atrocities have ceased, the worst has been avoided. But the Secretary General said also in the report, the situation remains a tragedy. So the international community must do more. More troops are needed to stabilize a country as big as France and the Benelux together. So the Secretary General recommends the deployment of a peacekeeping operation, which allow an increase of 30% of the number of troops deployed, and only a PKO would have the capability to intervene countrywide and the capacity to help the CAR authorities to rebuild the states. We have all heard the clear request of the CAR foreign minister for a PKO, and I think we have to answer to this call. So that's the reason why France will table in the coming weeks a draft resolution which will authorize the creation of peacekeeping operation in CAR. Why in the coming weeks? Actually, it simply means that we are going to enter a negotiation. It will be a difficult negotiation, as usual, for a lot of different reasons. First, I think for a lot of countries, and I do understand it, the financial burden of the peacekeeping operations are really becoming a real question. You know, we are now at, I guess, 120,000 soldiers, men and women, civilian and soldiers deployed. So it will add to the budget something very significant. Secondly, in a more, I think, substantial and concrete way, I think this operation will be very particular because basically there is no state left in the car, which means that it wouldn't make sense to deploy all the kit of a peacekeeping operation right now in the car, simply because there are some functions which would be impossible to fulfill while there is no state, no administration. So we will need to have a sort of, I should say, sequential approach. First, to emphasize the protection of the civilians, the support to the delivery of humanitarian aid, really and after that, in the second phase, maybe, and it will depend on what we will be told by the special representative, to go to a different phase of a peacekeeping operation. So it means that we will need a sort of strategic planning of having an evolutive peacekeeping operation. So it will be, I guess, it will be in a sort of also a new approach for peacekeeping operation adapted to the specific ground that we will face. So again, I do hope that we will have a resolution, really in the coming weeks. But in any case, the objective is a transfer of authority the 15th of September. It was as it is in the report. So it means that we will have to support the MISCA in the coming weeks. So we will have to find, innovative arrangements to do it. Oui.
Les recommandations du secrétaire général en ce sens. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire s'il y a encore des résistances à ces recommandations et si oui, quelles sont-elles?
Non, il n'y a pas de résistance. Je crois que tous les États membres comprennent la nécessité d'une opération de maintien de la paix, mais il y a des questions. Il y a des questions, comme je le disais, tout d'abord parce que beaucoup de pays n'ont pas d'informations sur la situation sur le terrain. Il n'y a que très peu de pays qui ont des ambassades sur le terrain. C'est un pays immense. Et donc, par exemple, il y a des nuances sur quelle est la nature de la menace. Est-ce qu'il y a des groupes terroristes arrivants, puisqu'il y a la menace de Boko Haram? Est-ce que nous avons en face de nous des groupes qui combattent, des combattants, ou est-ce que nous avons des bandits de grand chemin ou des petits criminels? Autre question importante, si on arrête par exemple des criminels, qu'est-ce qu'on va en faire, puisqu'il n'y a pas de prison? Vous voyez, il y a donc beaucoup de questions. C'est une opération qui est lourde et c'est aussi une opération qui, dans la durée, parce qu'il est évident que les Nations Unies vont être en République centrafricaine pour longtemps. C'est d'abord la sécurité, puis ensuite c'est la reconstruction de l'État. Yes.
Was kind of consensus. So like you say, it looks like there is no resistance. But lately, because there's been problems on other issues, so the tension is high on other issues, do you think this can affect this particular problem on the way you want things to speed up for Central Africa?
Well, I see. First I have to see, but I don't think so. So far, there is no really. I think everybody wants to treat this tragedy on its own merit, if I may say. What are the problems? Everybody has been moved by the call of the minister, the Central African minister. Yes, last question.
Mr. Ambassador, I understand that some countries might like some adjustments in the recommended size of the force, or rather the ratio of police to troops. I mean, is it going to be possible in the course of negotiations to potentially increase the number of police and have a corresponding reduction in the number of troops, or is that not necessarily a good idea?
I don't think it will be in the negotiation. As I have said, in the beginning, we need certainly an amount of forces to restore law and order, to intervene throughout the country. What I called, now it's the concept of surge. So maybe later on, and that's the reason why I was saying that it's the first time that we try to have an evolutive approach from the beginning. Maybe later we will need less soldiers and more policemen. Really? She didn't make a report.
She did. January 20th, she said France and Angara put Muslims at risk. It's in a written report.
Good afternoon. I would just want to add a few words to what obviously has been said to you. So, High Commissioner Gutierrez, USG Amos, and I spent 3 hours in consultations with the Security Council. We amplified on our briefings. Clearly, the situation is extremely serious. I think even though there may have been some stabilization, relative stabilization in Bangui, that owes very largely to the fact that maybe 15% at most of the Muslim population remains in the town. All the others have fled. And almost 2 million people are at great humanitarian risk. And of course, all this against a background where funding is extremely limited. If at all you heard what my colleagues had to say earlier in the day. Now, regarding the proposal of the Secretary General to rehat eventually MISCA into a UN peacekeeping operation, this was of course discussed. A number of questions were asked. What I would like to tell you is that first, we have been working in extremely close cooperation with the African Union. And you heard the ambassador of the African Union. I think we are all very much in agreement. We're in agreement on the goal, that is to say, the establishment of a peacekeeping operation within, say, 6 months or so, by mid-September. The fact that absolute emphasis has to be put on the support that can be given to MISCA, the African Union troops, who are doing a splendid job alongside with the French of Sangaris, and probably before long alongside the European force to Central Africa. But they need to be supported, and we will do all we can, because after all, at the end of the day, what we, either member states or others, can invest in the African Union force is an investment in what will eventually be, if the Security Council so decides, a peacekeeping operation. So we have a joint interest in helping them in every way. And then, of course, we, as you've seen in the report of the Secretary General, we are working to developing this proposal for a fit-for-purpose approach. It will be, if it is so decided, a flexible operation, one that will need to move very rapidly, putting more emphasis initially on the military component, and the proposal stands at a ceiling of 10,000 troops. But as things go, probably developing rapidly the police component, because it will be not about fighting against people with heavy weapons, but it will be about fighting against criminals, against groups with limited armament. It will be a matter of crowd control and disarming people basically with machetes. So this is what it's about, but beyond that, of course, it will be about helping the state of Central Africa rebuild itself, because that state is non-existent. It has no police, no gendarmerie, no army, no justice, no police, and that will be, of course, a job for the long haul, but I think it is very necessary.
Can you do what you just described without a resolution? Because it takes a while for peacekeeping department to organize countries, and the resolution seems to be delayed.
No, I think this is a process just starting. We shall see how it goes, but I heard nothing during the discussions today that leads me to a conclusion that this might not be eventually decided. What is important, I think, is that a decision would be made before too long, because we need, as you know, a lead time before we can actually project the operation. We believe that it would take something like 6 months, so we need to get started, if it is decided, as soon as possible.
Mr. Letsus, you talked about in the Council about the substantial cost of the mission, the financial cost. I didn't see a number in the report. Could you talk a little about that? And would they initially be deployed for 1 year? What do you have in mind for the deployment?
Well, usually mandates, as you know, are for 1 year, and there is a discussion on renewal every time. No, I think it would be vain to say that the cost will not be substantial. They will be substantial because that's a fact, and especially in a country which is so remote, from anywhere. You will need to put in a lot of enablers. That means APCs, that means aircraft, including helicopters, and that does not come cheap. But certainly we know that right now there is a lot of austerity in the financial context, and we do our best to act as responsible citizens and definitely not squander the resources that are given to us by member states.
Chad is in the list.
Keep that cost down? Would you consider UAVs to keep that cost down like you've used in DRC?
UAVs we will consider, but not now. I mean, this is not the issue right now.
If you could maybe just follow up on that, the estimated cost, would you put it probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars, or could it reach to $1 billion or more? And
not 1 billion, but in hundreds of millions, yes, most probably.
Okay, and what percentage of the African contingents, African troops at this point, are ready, trained, and equipped at UN standards?
As in Mali last year, this will be, of course, one thing to consider. The intention is indeed to rehat as many people from the present MISCA as possible, but that will depend on a number of factors, including the level of training and the level of equipment. We do have standards for UN operations, and we'll have to work very closely with them so that they are indeed in line with those standards. Thank you.
Chad is on the list, and they're part of MISCA. Will child soldiers be part of your mission?